Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third session in our sessions around digitally inclusive classrooms using the Microsoft tools available to all schools in Hub. If I could ask you, if you are watching this now as the recording or in today's session, just to quickly fill in the attendance form to register your attendance at today's session, please. If you're watching this as a recording, if you'd like to pause the video now, complete the form and then come back to the video to continue through the session. My name is Sean Powell and I am the Associate Curriculum Partner for Digital Skills within the AS. My contact details are there, so if anyone would like to get in contact with me at a further date to ask about any of the inclusive tools that we've suggested throughout this programme, or to get any other information around digital, please do get in contact. As I go through this session, it's important to know I don't work for Microsoft, but I am an advocate of some of their tools. And I've been a Microsoft Innovator expert for the last 3 years and find that the Microsoft tools built in within Hub are very useful within the classroom, and hope that following today's session, you'll have more use of some of those tools available to you. As you go through today's session, and any session that you do with us, some of the information you get today may fit into one of these three categories. The first category being this may be new to you, so you may want to implement some of this information back in your classroom once you get back into school. You may be familiar with some of the tools today, so might be just going over, refreshing some of that information and trying to enhance the usage of that within the classroom. Or you may sit within the experience bracket, where these tools are quite second nature to you, so you may want to become the mentor or the coach for others within your school. For the programme, these are the success criteria that we've been focusing on as we go through, 7 in total. But for tonight's session, we're going to be focusing solely on this one here, how to develop inclusive writing in the classroom using a range of the Microsoft tools that are available to us. Okay, so to start us off then, as educators, we already know that writing and reading are buddies essentially. They go hand in hand, and there are many capabilities and tools built into the Microsoft products that can help us support students who need an extra boost when it comes to getting their ideas on paper, conventions within their written page, or proofreading their work. Writing can be a daunting task to some students, so the use of these learning tools can help give students the support they were looking for all along to help them feel more comfortable putting their thoughts into writing. So as you're considering this slide, I'd like you to think about how many of those students in your class that love to write, and how about those students who know exactly what they write, what they want to write the minute they start their paper. Now, whether it's a typing brain block, a broken finger, or writing specifically within a person-centered profile or an IDP, sometimes students need to use learning tools to access and create content efficiently. So today's session is essentially helping students conquer that blank page. It's important to understand your options as a teacher to support students who may need different tools for learning, like the immersive reader, which we covered in the last session, and the dictation tools that we're going to cover today. Another thing to consider when thinking about typing and writing is children's fluency on a keyboard. We often spend time practicing our handwriting and developing fluency with our handwriting. However, how often do we actually practice typing with our keyboard? Studies have found that where children have not developed fluency in their keyboard, their working memory is full, the cognitive load is too much, so when they go to transfer their ideas from their brain onto the page in front of them, the time they get round to typing and locating the keys, the idea has been lost. So it's important that we consider typing practice for our children as well as our handwriting practice. Really important quote there on the screen from a head of a school, thinking about our pupils all pretty much without exception hated writing. The learning tools that we're going to look at today transformed writing for their pupils. And I think that's really, really powerful. These tools will transform some writing within your classroom. So this here is an example of a 9-year-old boy and his writing his mind map. Now this child was dyslexic, so he found the writing quite difficult. And as you can see, the teacher has scribed for him because writing is a tortuous task for him. It's pretty illegible and a very slow process. When students struggle this much to get ideas on paper, there is a lot that's missed because of that frustration. This 9-year-old boy was then able to use the learning tools to actually write his story. So that same child then wrote this story based on the plan that he completely created independently on OneNote. The child was able to write this entirely independently removing the embarrassment of having an adult looking over his shoulder. He could type and then use the immersive reader to read it back to himself. If he chose the wrong word from the spell check menu, he would realise his mistake when he'd read it back to him again. His output increased dramatically. He said, "Using Microsoft Word has made my work quicker. No one has to tell me when I have written something wrong. The computer does it by showing me, or when I listen back using Immersive Reader." And I think that's really important, tying in how Immersive Reader really supports learners as well in their reading, but also in their writing and in that editing process within writing too. It is very difficult to develop the higher thinking skills needed for creative writing if you can't write your thoughts down. Now, some students really struggle with getting their ideas on paper. Some students don't even know where to start when they're given a writing assignment. Now, using the dictate feature within Microsoft Word and OneNote, it enables a student to use technology without the frightening burden of typing things perfectly. Some examples of this may include students with physical disabilities not being able to access the keyboard or use keystrokes to write. Another example would be a student with a temporary disability from a sports injury or otherwise. Either way, a student needs to be able to access and complete content regardless. Tools like Dictate can empower students to find success in the classroom. Now, as educators, we know there are many skills that students need to be effective writers. We know it's important to let students express themselves, make mistakes, and choose what's important to their writing. Think in your head of a time when a student had that light bulb moment, a time when a student looked at you with wide eyes and just knew something had clicked. That light bulb moment in teaching writing could be empowering your students using learning tools to enhance their writing experience. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull up Word on my desktop. Now, the first thing I'd like to point out is that if you're using Office 365 on the Home tab, you will see that you have a Dictate button just by here. Okay, that can dictate more than 11 different languages, and there are lots more languages that are in development as well. This means your students have access to a speech-to-text feature that is built directly into Word. It is also built into PowerPoint, Outlook, and OneNote. Now, Dictate is not only built into the desktop versions of your applications, but also into the web versions as well. So let's explore the Office dictation tool a little bit. I'm going to say a simple sentence in a second, and what you should see is that sentence appear on the screen. The teacher went to the store to buy glue, comma, paper, comma, and pencils, full stop. So when I click on Dictate the first time, the microphone will turn on and it will recognize my voice, and it will then essentially type what I'm saying into the system. Notice as I go through, I add commas and full stops, and the technology then and the artificial intelligence adds that in to the work for you. Now, this will never be 100% perfect, but it does then develop other skills for children, that ability to read back their writing and edit it as they go through to see the mistakes that the artificial intelligence has kind of made as you go through. Using this technology, students with low vision, physical disabilities, and all other students now have the option to use their voice to tell their story, rather than relying on their keyboard. There are so many benefits to using dictation with students, but the biggest benefit is increased independence. Something else to consider at this point is that typing as a skill is really, really important. We often practice using handwriting and practicing our handwriting so children become more fluent with their handwriting, but how often do we practice keyboard fluency and keyboard skills? More often than not, children have the ideas in their brains ready to translate onto the screen, but because their working memory is full up with the location of different keys on the keyboard, by the time they get to the keyboard and begin to type, they've lost what they were thinking. So teaching fluency on a keyboard at this point is also very, very important. What I'm also going to do now is I'm going to show you this document here. So this is a sample document. This is going to showcase all of the editor's features. But I'm still using Word Desktop, and in the Review tab across the top here, we're going to click onto the editor option just here on the left-hand side. Now, you may have seen this pop up when you're working in Word, but this editor tool is really, really powerful. Now, Here, what you are essentially doing is you're going to see this amazing learning tool editor. It takes natural language capabilities, focus and attention, and read aloud, and combines them into one easy to use interface. Now, if you look on the right hand side here, you can see I've got an editor score, and then you can see a range of things that I might need to consider when editing my piece of work. You can see that there are 3 spelling errors. And if I click onto the number 3, it will then highlight the spelling word so that I can focus and read it out loud. I can also click the read aloud button. And that gives me the context on the word. Everything is laid out in an organized way so I can easily focus and get access to the content. If I then click the arrow in the top right corner, it jumps me to the next word. Now, Editor will allow me to jump through the document in a focused way. If I had 50 spelling errors in this document, and honestly, all those red squiggly lines can be quite overwhelming. Whether I'm a student with a learning need or with an IDP or a person-centered profile, or whether I'm just someone who's working on a document, Editor is really helpful for everyone. What you can also see then is the suggestions of the words that may need to be used to replace the dictionary. But the other thing to consider as well is at the bottom of the screen here is that your default language is selected for United Kingdom. What I can also do then for the 3 words that are suggested, I can click onto the 3 dots and I can use the read aloud feature there to listen in to the word in its correct term. That's the word I want. To simply click on that word and it will then change the word in the text for me. You can see now that I only have 2 spelling mistakes. So again, I can click onto those and I can work through the document. You'll also see then that there are grammar options. It's the same thing. If I focus on grammar, there are now 5 errors that I need to focus on. I can jump forwards and backwards and I can use a read aloud. So again, the read aloud tool is really important for allowing the listener or the learner, to listen to the word back and get it into context. Now, I can again work through those and it will change the corrections as I go through. Further down then, we've also got some refinements tools that I can use to focus on as I go through my work. It offers suggestions on clarity, consciousness, the formality of the writing, and punctuation conventions, and also now inclusiveness. And as you can see, inclusiveness is ticked, but inclusiveness is a really, really powerful tool. The inclusive language vocabulary tool will identify vocabulary choice or gender neutral language. For example, maybe I've been saying fireman and policeman all throughout my document. Editor will suggest that I use firefighter or police officer. So Editor not only helps students with dysgraphia, dyslexia, and so on, it helps everyone to be more clear and inclusive in their writing. Editor is an inclusive feature that can help all people with varying abilities and in varying situations. If you're like me, you're probably already thinking how it can help improve your writing. So I'd like you to take a moment and think of ways that this tool could impact your students in your classroom. Now, another amazing tool that we have available to us in Windows 10 is word prediction, also known as text suggestions. This feature allows students to get suggestions for words as they type. Text suggestions are a common feature on most phones. Whilst texting, your phone will suggest you words as you type. Now, students are familiar with this feature on their phones, and they can now access the same feature in Word. The way that I can turn this on is to go to the search bar at the bottom here for Windows, and I'm just going to type in settings. As I go into the settings app, at the top here in the search bar, I'm just going to search for predictions. And as you'll see, it will then give you 2 drop-down options. If I click onto one of these drop-down options, you can see then by typing, I've got show text suggestions as I type on the software keyboard. I'd like to turn that on. And then also, if you've got an attached keyboard to your device, you'll need to turn it on for your hardware as well. This option is built into Windows 10 settings and is available now. So if you have a student that could use a lightweight word prediction tool, you can show them how to turn on the word prediction feature in Windows 10. So I'm going to go over now to a document and just show you how that works. So there's my sentence earlier from Dictate. But if I now begin to type another sentence, and the sentence is going to be, the elephants were going to the river to get a drink of water, you will see as I type, the word prediction then appears above each of the words as I type through sentences. Again, another really important tool to help children with their spelling and word choice, but also, again, something that they're used to using in their everyday lives on their smart devices. So just as a reminder then, Immersive Reader, a really important tool for supporting learners in the classroom. To access that in the Word web version, we go to View and click onto Immersive Reader. This will then open the Immersive Reader within the document, and this will allow learners the possibility of listening back to the work that they have typed or dictated. As they're listening to the work, they will then be able to identify any mistakes, and they'll be able to go back after using Immersive Reader to edit what they have written. The other tools that are really, really important as well, in the grammar options here, if you're looking at developing different types of writing and you're focusing on adjectives, the learners then will be able to turn on the parts of speech option to identify all the different adjectives that they have used in their writing. This will give them a quick visual on whether they've used enough or whether they need to use more. It would also highlight the adjectives, and perhaps they then may want to consider different synonyms so they can improve their writing as they're going through. Just going to jump back then into the desktop version of Word. And one of the things to consider as well for writers and readers with dyslexia is that the color of the page can make a big difference on how they have the ability to read the writing clearer. If we go into the Home option and then come across to Design, on the far right hand side here in the page background option, you've got page color. In here, you can now begin to change the page color to make it easier for learners to access the reading and their typing as well. So another little tool there to support inclusiveness within your classroom. So I want to think about some of the examples and ways that these tools are being used in the classroom. And here's an awesome quote from somebody teaching in America who's been using learning tools with his students. He says, "It's so inspiring to think that this student went from barely getting any words on a page to writing entire pages independently. Imagine what a huge accomplishment this is for that student." So that's really, really powerful there. Gone from 3 or 4 sentences to 2.5 pages just from using editor and dictation in the classroom. Really, really important. Another great example of you using those learning tools within the writing. Another great example of using learning tools within the writing classroom is to boost morale. Students usually like to hear themselves talk, self-express, and be creative. So why not position these tools as vehicles for self-expression and personalized learning? That student who's stuck on how to start their writing, show them Dictate. That student who has low self-esteem because whenever they write, they always have at least 20 misspelled words or grammar, show them Editor. That student who loves to text and is so used to using the text predictions to communicate on their phones, show them word prediction. That student who would rather run a marathon than proofread what they've written, show them Immersive Reader. The possibilities are endless when we enable our students to become more independent writers by utilising the learning tools that are available to you all through Hub. And the last thing I want you to consider and think about today is some information that's available online, particularly through Mike Tholfson here. He's an advocate of Microsoft tools, and he often shares a range of videos and graphics and so on. And this is one of the latest ones that he shared here around making the most of Microsoft Word and those tools that are available in there. One of the other tools I think is really, really cool and really important is the Translate tool. You now have the ability to translate a whole document from English to another language in a click of a button. You've got the researcher tool on there. Children have the ability to research within Microsoft Word, so they don't have to go out and use different tabs. And again, some of those other things that we've spoken about today: dictation, Immersive Reader, and Editor. So I'd really recommend, if you're on Twitter or on any social media looking for Mike, following him and having a look at some of his tutorials and suggestions and videos that he posts on a regular basis. So that brings to an end our session today around inclusive writing, a short session looking at a few tools that might benefit you in the classroom. If I could ask you now, if you're watching this video as a recording or if you're live with us now, please just to fill in this evaluation form. If you could just pause this video and type the link into your web browser or scan that QR code there with your phone, it will take you through to the evaluation for this session. Thank you very much for spending your time this evening with us. And I hope that these inclusive tools are really helping you in your classroom to develop inclusive writing. Diolch. Hwyl.